meet with President Trump, where he bragged to Trump that, quote, this is a good one. Now, I'm not saying that the president is a pedophile, but there is a lot of evidence in these files that suggests that he's very close friends with a lot of men who are pedophiles.
A courtroom once fell silent when a lawyer stopped asking questions and started telling the truth people were too afraid to say out loud. That same kind of silence just hit Congress. Stay with me, because what unfolded next only got more intense.
It's expired. The gentlelady is recognized.
Thank you. I seek unanimous consent to introduce into the record the research that Representative Kamlager-Dove and I referenced concerning the threat of right-wing domestic terrorism, which the Department of Justice scrubbed from its website in September.
Without objection, the gentlelady from
Thank
Texas
you.
is recognized.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. And to be clear, I'm not going to ask any questions of this witness because this witness has revealed that she has no intentions of answering questions. But instead, I'm going to ask some very basic questions really quickly of my colleague, Becca Ballant, if she will answer right or wrong, raping children.
Wrong.
Right or wrong, killing random citizens.
Definitely wrong.
Right or wrong, enriching yourself as the sitting president of the United States.
Definitely wrong.
Okay, thank you, because I probably never would have got that with our witness. Our witness who somehow is a lawyer but does not understand how it works with witnesses. I'm not really sure what law school she went to and what all kind of cases she tried, but typically when you come into a space and somebody's a witness, then they sit there and they answer questions instead of asking questions. And then we also have this objection that we use as lawyers called non-responsive when a witness fails to actually answer the question. But nevertheless, let me address the survivors, because that's exactly who they are. They are not victims, they are survivors. Let me say thank you for having more courage and moral clarity in your pinky fingers than the entire Department of Justice. We are currently the laughingstock of the world, partially because of the failed leadership within the DOJ, as we see kings and queens falling everywhere around the world. But we don't know the basics of right and wrong in this country, because it's not about partisanship. And that's why I applaud Thomas Massie, because he's the only person on the Republican side that has a backbone and knows how to stand up to corruption. But nevertheless, let me keep going. My Democratic colleagues have been attacked this entire committee hearing. They have been lied on, and frankly, the American people weren't looking for that. They were looking for answers about the corruption that they see coming from this administration. In the written testimony of this witness, of this particular witness, she stated that when she took office, she had two main goals. The first was to end the weaponization of justice, and second, to return the department to its core mission. Not only have you lied about both, you've intentionally done the exact opposite. You're spending more taxpayer resources arresting journalists than you are prosecuting pedophiles and creeps. In fact, your boss, the President of the United States, stated that this administration, quote, took the freedom of speech away. And at your direction, DOJ has arrested Don Lemon and Georgia Fort. And I might add that y'all actually had a judge that rejected y'all for trying to arrest Don Lemon before, just like the grand jury rejected y'all as it relates to Senator Kelly, just like a grand jury rejected y'all as it relates to Senator Slotkin, just like the case against Tish James was dismissed and the case against Mr. Comey was dismissed. I completely don't get how it is that you're sitting at the top of DOJ, because you don't seem to be good at your job. You're spending more taxpayer resources arresting these journalists. In fact, we know after Georgia Fort and Don Lemon were arrested, we know that there were homes of journalists that were raided. We know that threatened prosecution against students protesting your actions and forced tech companies to remove apps used to track ISIS activities. But let's circle back to you protecting pedophiles and creeps, because I want to talk about the president and his possible involvement with Jeffrey Epstein. Now, I don't know what the president might have done with Jeffrey Epstein, but unlike this administration, I believe that facts matter, so let's talk about the facts. Fact number one, Donald Trump is one of the most named people in the Epstein files. At least 5,000 files contains more than 38,000 references to Trump, his wife, or Mar-a-Lago. Fact number two, Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell made young girls available to Trump on multiple occasions. For example, according to this file, Ghislaine Maxwell presented a young girl to President Trump who spent more than 20 minutes apparently flirting with her. Here's another example. This shows notes from FBI investigators that describe Jeffrey Epstein transporting a victim to Mar-a-Lago to meet with President Trump, where he bragged to Trump that, quote, this is a good one. Now, I'm not saying that the president is a pedophile, but there is a lot of evidence in these files that suggests that he's very close friends with a lot of men who are pedophiles. What's crazy about all of this is just that this is a big cover-up. And this administration is engaged in it. In fact, this administration is complicit. But there are numerous others, like how the DOJ is attempting to obstruct justice in the investigation of the rogue agents who have murdered American citizens, or how the DOJ seized voter data from Fulton County in an attempt to steal the 2026 midterm elections, or how federal agents have Tom Homan on tape accepting a bribe and your agency killed the investigation, or how your agency is ready to give the president a $230 million payday, which is unconstitutional. The Constitution is clear. The president shall not receive any payment except his salary while in office. The fact of the matter is that you will be remembered as one of the worst attorney generals in history. An attorney general who has prioritized obstruction over justice, corruption over the law, fealty to the president over loyalty to the Constitution. And Mr. Chairman, I will yield.
Gentlelady yields. Gentleman from Missouri is recognized. Excuse me, gentleman from Kansas, the Attorney General, former Attorney General, Mr. Schmidt is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and General Bondi, thanks for being here. Did you have anything you wanted to say before we talk?
I do. Thank you, Congressman. Thank you, my friend, for many years. I find it interesting that she didn't even want to try, Congresswoman Crockett, to ask any questions, because she certainly did not condemn her leader, Hakeem Jeffries, for taking money from Jeffrey Epstein after Epstein was convicted. And I will be brief to give you your time, Congressman. This is what she didn't want to talk about. Texas, from Cuba, convicted, homicide, arson, weapon offense.
Convicted.
You know,
So what we
Estrada,
talking about? Convict
Texas,
some of these
convicted,
perpetrators that
homicide.
rape these women that are
Chairman,
sitting
time
behind you
time
that
belongs
you
to the
refuse
gentleman
to
from
even acknowledge
Kansas.
they are here.
Time belongs to the
Texas.
gentleman from Kansas.
Mr. Chairman, could I have a few seconds
You
back
bet,
to make
you
up
bet.
for the yelling? Thank
bet.
you. General, did you have anything
Congress.
further to say?
Texas, convicted of homicide. Cecil Joseph from Dominican Republic. Texas, convicted for kidnapping, rape. Khalid Khan from Afghanistan. That's why they want to talk about Epstein and not what's happening in their own states.
Thank you, General, and thank you for being here. And this has been quite a spectacle to observe today. I think it's sad. I ran for Congress because I thought we had serious problems in this country we wanted to try to fix together, and this performance today, not yours, General, but some of my colleagues, has not shored up my confidence that we are up to the task. You and I served together for 8 years when you were Attorney General of Florida and I in Kansas. You served professionally. I'm glad to be able to serve with you in these new roles, and I'm
In a heated exchange, Jasmine Crockett didn't just question Pam Bondi. She dismantled the entire moment, and what followed exposed deeper tensions that go far beyond politics. Watch closely, because this story takes a turn you won't expect. What you just witnessed was not a typical congressional hearing. It was a breakdown of trust, authority, and accountability playing out in real time. And to understand why this moment matters, you have to look beyond the shouting and into what was actually being said, and more importantly, what was not being answered. From the very start, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett made a strategic decision that immediately changed the tone of the hearing. Instead of engaging in the usual back-and-forth questioning, she refused to ask Attorney General Pam Bondi anything at all. That may sound unusual, but in congressional hearings, that move sends a powerful message. It signals that the witness is no longer seen as credible enough to provide meaningful answers. If you are following this, take a second to like the video and subscribe, because moments like this are rare and they reveal how power actually works behind the scenes. Rather than asking questions, Crockett turned to her colleague and posed simple moral questions: right or wrong, harming children, harming innocent people, abusing power. These were not random. They were designed to establish a baseline of morality that everyone watching could agree on. And by doing that, she created a contrast, a gap between basic right and wrong and what she believes is happening inside the Department of Justice. Now here is where this becomes more than political theater. Crockett accused the Department of Justice under Bondi's leadership of failing its core mission. That mission, as she pointed out, is supposed to be about justice, not politics, not loyalty, not deflection. When she referenced the idea of non-responsive answers, she was invoking a legal principle. In court, when a witness avoids a question, it can undermine their credibility entirely. In this hearing, she was essentially arguing that the same standard should apply. If you think public officials should be held to that same legal standard, drop a comment below, because this is where accountability begins. She then shifted focus to survivors, not victims, and that language matters. Calling them survivors emphasizes resilience and strength, but it also highlights a system that may have failed to protect them. This was not just rhetoric, it was a reminder that behind every document, every file, every redaction, there are real people whose lives were impacted. Crockett's criticism extended into broader allegations about priorities within the Department of Justice. She claimed that resources were being directed toward actions like targeting journalists instead of focusing on prosecuting serious crimes. Now, whether one agrees with that claim or not, the underlying issue she raised is critical: how government institutions prioritize their power. And that is something every democracy must constantly evaluate. If you care about transparency in government, this is your moment to stay engaged and informed. Then came the most controversial part of her remarks, the reference to connections involving Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein. Crockett was careful in her wording, stating she was not making direct accusations, but pointing to documented relationships and calling for transparency. This distinction is important. In legal and political discourse, there is a line between allegation and evidence, and crossing that line without proof can have serious consequences. But raising questions about documented relationships is often how investigations begin. What this moment revealed is the deep divide, not just between political parties, but between two competing narratives. One side argues that there is a systemic failure to hold powerful individuals accountable. The other side argues that these accusations are political-motivated distractions from other national issues. And in the middle of that divide are the American people, trying to determine what is true. When Attorney General Pam Bondi responded, she did not directly engage with most of Crockett's points. Instead, she pivoted to other issues, including crime and immigration. This is a common strategy in political communication, shifting the focus to a different topic that resonates with a different audience. But in doing so, it can leave the original questions unanswered, which only fuels further skepticism. Another lawmaker then stepped in, attempting to restore a more traditional tone, praising Bondi's past record and criticizing the overall conduct of the hearing. This moment is key because it highlights how differently each side interprets the same event. What one side sees as necessary confrontation, the other sees as political spectacle. So what should viewers take away from all of this? First, congressional hearings are not just about gathering facts, they are also about shaping public perception. Second, the way questions are asked or not asked can be just as powerful as the answers themselves. And third, accountability in government is not automatic. It requires constant pressure from both lawmakers and the public. If you've made it this far, you're already ahead of most viewers in understanding what really happened here. The next step is to stay informed, question narratives, and engage critically with what you see. Share this video with someone who needs a clearer breakdown of what is happening, because understanding is the first step toward accountability.